vent for a second. Those, I get tons of those. I'm an SEO guy I'm an SEO guy, I'm an SEO guy, I'm an SEO guy. Look at my article, look at my article. Link to my page kind of thing. You guys, nobody gets those at all? It's brutal. Yeah, you know, it's just because on my business site, here's the thing that I know I shouldn't do, right? I have my email address hot linked here, or my info that then sends to my normal. So I get tons of spam. I should get rid of that. But I also like it there. So legit people, it's like one of those damned if you do, damned if you don't. But yeah, I get, because I wrote this one article right there, they ping me for the, you know, we can help you. Do you need, you know, it's just like, Jesus Christ, leave me alone, you guys. I'm trying to get work done. And then don't insult don't insult somebody's website unless you really mean to insult it, right? Because then they'll get mad. And then you guys will get into a trolling contest, and nobody ever wins in one of those. We're both losers in one of those, right? How many of you have done that on Facebook? You've just gotten in super trolly contests with somebody that you don't know from like halfway across the globe. Anybody? No? Wow, you guys must have, yeah? Your self-esteem must be way better than mine. So, because I get hooked into those, man. It's just like, oh, God, gotta stop. So anyway, here we are. If we look at the schedule, we are now going to convert our websites to being responsive. And when I first wrote up this class, when I first started teaching the class as the lab to HCDE537, that was kind of pre-responsive days. And then as I was TAing that class, they wanted me to cover responsive, so I had to learn how to do responsive stuff. And what I did when I first started teaching the responsive stuff, or to learn how to, make a website responsive, I wrote this blog posting on my really shitty website here, right? I know my website looks like a hello, my name is badge. It was supposed to be a temporary design that ended up being a permanent design, right? But what I did here is I took my personal blog, and I, just like I've taught you guys to use the 960 grid, in my personal blog here, then if you go to the inspect, oh, who was it that emailed me with that one JavaScript error? With the ad blocker thing. Did that ever get resolved? Is that person not here today? Somebody back over here, no? Okay. So if we look at then, come on. Oh, that's the, sorry, wrong element. Middle. So again, I might have shown you guys, I think I did show you guys the trick that in a lot of my websites, what I do is I use the 960. Can you see that on the projector? It's a little bit better in this one, right, than it is the other one. So what I started doing was using the 960 grid way back when. And then when I decided to, or needed to learn how to do responsive design, right, I went from desktop down. Now, again, how many of you guys have heard any kind of, oh, you shouldn't do desktop down, you should do mobile first, right? Anybody? I'm not going to argue with that, right? If you are planning a website, to me, I don't necessarily think that you should either do one or the other. you should make your designs look appropriate, whether you go mobile first or desktop down, to then make things look appropriate on a mobile device and make things look appropriate on a desktop, right? The one thing that I started noticing again when the whole I think they fixed theirs from when the whole mobile first, yeah, they've definitely fixed theirs. When the whole mobile first thing came out, what I noticed was websites that then changed their design to be responsive and went mobile first, the desktop version of the website ended up looking like it was a huge phone or huge tablet version. And the downfall of that is, to me, draw on the board. So if I have, so those of you at home aren't going to see this drawing. Right? So if I have a phone, right, and I have a, spotlight kind of rotating something or other or whatever, and then I may have, icons and stuff down below, right? What happens then when you blow that up mobile first, if you don't really adjust for making a desktop layout, right? What will happen is when you do go mobile first like that, then when you get to a desktop monitor, right? Even though this is like, let's say, what's the viewport for a phone? Let's just go iPhone 6. 375 wide. What's likely to happen is then your whole design just blows up, right? Just gets bigger and bigger and bigger until it goes all the way out to the edge of the viewport, which if you're on a 1920 pixel monitor, then it goes, this image then goes all the way out to the edge, and then what ends up happening is you don't see half of the normal viewport because you're now in a, so you go from a portrait to a landscape version, right? That is my only qualm with the mobile first design. Now, websites like List Apart have since, I think, realized this, right? And realized that when you do blow things up to a desktop monitor, if you are presenting a phone version on a desktop monitor, right? The ergonomics are different. I'm on a desktop, I'm on a laptop. I've been using a laptop for how long now? I'm used to something being a certain way. So I'm using a phone, I'm used to being something a certain way. So if you present a just blown up phone version on desktop, then according to Jacob Nielsen's law, which isn't one of his 10 heuristics, but one of the first books he wrote, he said that if this is then fold, right? Does anybody know this principle that if everything above the fold looks like it's complete in its entirety, right? Meaning, if I were to see half of these boxes sticking out above the fold, I would know there was more content. But if I just saw this area, I wouldn't necessarily know there was more content, and I wouldn't scroll down and I'd miss half the website. Does anybody know that principle by Nielsen? Okay, so to me, that was my qualm with mobile first, and that only. If you can then successfully pull off a mobile first design, you pull it off successfully and make it look appropriate, like what a List Apart looks like they have done now is, well, let's just say it like this. When I first looked at the A List Apart website after they had done it, that whole kind of spotlight where it says A List Apart, they had a giant image that when you were on a big monitor, it did this, right? And that was just super annoying to me. It looks like they are now, by being on a laptop, I'm actually seeing that there's more content there. And that whole, does anybody remember when the concept was, don't make users scroll, don't make users scroll? Does anybody remember that? And people were like, why not? Scrolling kind of feels natural, right? So here we can then see, obviously, there's more content and we can work down, right? So what I'm going to teach you then is, because what we did in this class was we built a desktop version of our websites, right? What I am going to do then is teach you how to take that desktop version of your website and as it moves in, let's see, I got it. Let's do it 100%. Sorry. As it moves in, things like then take a look at what I have up top here. So I have my logo, if you can call it that, right? It's just, you know, my name and a dumb photo of me a long time ago. My business card, which links to my shitty business website. That drawing there that links to my school website. The tassel of the 2014 thing that links to the assignments that I did when I was going through my master's degree here. So in terms of mobile first, right, you have to then prioritize what are the important pieces of information. In other words, if we go to looking at that one drawing from this one here, where this is just me drawing up on the whiteboard of what are your calls to action, what's the main point of your website. Again, according to your business goals, what are you trying to do as business goals? We're trying to save the polar bears, right? Well, if you're trying to save the polar bears, what does it take to save the polar bears? Money, right? So in other words, your main call to action through your website is donate to whatever saving the polar bears. Just like if we were to look at then a website like ASPCA, I'm not sure, was it .com? The main call to action on the ASPCA website then is similar, right? We want you to donate. Well, if you want my money then from a user perspective, what do I need to know to make sure that, yeah, I'm going to donate? What will money be spent on, right? What are some statistics of why I should donate? So how will the money be spent? Is it ethical? Is it legal? Is it going to something that I support? Is this an issue that I believe in, et cetera, so on and so forth, right? So when it then comes to mobile first or a phone design, right? If donate is that special call to action, then what you can do is If we're on a phone, then, right, well, that main call to action is right front and center. So in terms of mobile first design, what you have to decide is you have less real estate, right? Or you have to make an impact, a more direct impact. I'm sure you guys have you guys worked on mobile designs and that kind of stuff? So I'm basically telling you guys stuff you already know. No? Okay, so like you pick that hierarchy of call to actions, right? And then that hierarchy of call to actions becomes, in terms of your mobile design, the first few things that somebody sees up top of your mobile design. That's all I'm trying to say. So make sure you design for desktop and for mobile. So in terms of a design like what we're doing, right? A traditional way that I'm doing stuff here then is as it comes down in size, things like, well, the links to my business websites, my school websites, my master's degree papers and stuff that I wrote are not that important, right? So they disappear. My navigation schema then goes from being a whole bunch of horizontal links to some kind of either a select menu or a toggle menu. My sidebar then possibly just slides all the way down underneath the content area. However, if you have a sidebar, or if you have certain things like the call to action on this website is obviously buy tickets. In order to know that you want to buy tickets for whatever show, this then upcoming shows widget right there is more important than from the ball type stuff. So what you may do then is, we inspect this, and if I have this over here in the sidebar, then here in the middle area, in the content area, right, I have then chopped things up into, and I just called this div right there, mobile, the other one news, the other one sidebar. And then what I can do is, or let's say it like this, how do these at this resolution, how is this sitting over to the right, how is this sitting over to the left? Starts with an F. Ends with the float. Right? Floats. Was that giving it away too much? A little bit? Okay. That's what I do. If I don't get the answer right away, it's like, okay, they either didn't understand the question or they're just like, fuck you, dude, just tell us, right? Don't make us answer your stuff. So if this is floated right, this is floated left, this is floated right, then as things come down in space, you get rid of the float property, or you say float none, and things will just stack the way they're written in the code there. So let's say if you were going mobile first, let me show you kind of what I'm talking about. If we look at then the GitHub repository, this exercise, there's two ways you can do this. In your style sheets, right, whatever you have written up top in your style sheets is how your website starts out, right? For desktop down, as you go down through your style sheet, And this is one of the reasons why media all in your style sheet declaration is really important, is because then what you're doing in your style sheet is, then what you are saying is, as we get below 1024, overwrite those styles to do something different, right? So when those widgets, when it comes in and all of a sudden they stack, what's actually happening is float none, right? So let's say you're going mobile first, right? Instead of saying media screen and max width, you would say media screen minimum width, right? And then you would start out with your design that those chunks of information are not floated. And once you get up to desktop, then you make them float. That's really the premise behind desktop down and mobile first in terms of how the code goes. Does that make sense? Right? So that's the whole, like, I don't know, if mobile first sounds like really wicked complex or some kind of theory that, oh my God, how do you do that? That's the oversimplification. Does that make sense?
So you could have just a completely different design for the website based on just like mobile's now blue and it's.
Correct. All it is overriding your styles. So either you're starting with a design that you've designed for 0 pixels to or whatever, like for phone, right? And then in your style sheet, the cascade goes, and then min width, right? So up above 4, whatever, you do this, up above 600, up above 800, up above 1024, right? And yeah, you can change it, you can hide elements, you can do whatever. Like for, again, all of you guys have totally been printing out my lectures to take notes on. Is that right? So therefore, what we were doing with those media queries was at screen and at this resolution, change it, whether it's up above a certain breakpoint or below a certain breakpoint. Again, desktop down, mobile first, whatever, okay? So then there's a setting like media print. So if you're going to print out my lectures, because I'll cry if you don't, then when you see it printed out, right, there's no navigation. It just looks like just the text and pictures are printed, right? So what's happening then is, because in our style sheet link we've said media all, then we can say, okay, now for print, grid, header, nav, sidebar, comments box, display none. Don't print those, right? Middle, padding, content, don't float, make it width 100%. Go the full width of whatever. If you're printing out on letter size paper, go out to letter. If you're printing this way, go out all that way, right? Does that make sense? Okay. So that's kind of how that all works. So where this term came from. Did anybody get this book, Responsive Web Design, Ethan Marcotte? Oh, So this was a suggested book for this class for this, what we're doing now. This is how I learned responsive web design. This is the book that this guy coined the phrase, right? In other words, your design is responding to your viewports. So when we're talking, has anybody heard the term viewport? Okay, so viewport then would be let's go back here. $800. Okay, so at 800 and down. Now, viewport is different than pixel density, right? So when we're talking viewports on our phones, okay, what we're talking about is, as far best as I can tell, I've never seen a definition of viewport versus pixel density. But how much pixels per inch are our phones up to now? A lot. Over 100, right? So our typical pixel density that we had been working with all these years was 72 pixels per inch. So what I think is happening, right, or what I see is happening, it's converting then the, however many, if we are working at 150 pixels per inch, it's a lot more than 375 across. It's converting it to 72 pixels per inch and calling that the viewport. That's how I understand what's happening. Does that make sense? So, ready to go? Hopefully those introductions before we just start getting into coding, understand the overall concept first. Okay, so I am merely going to open my styles.css, and I am then going to, excuse me, open header.php. Because talking about viewports then, if we go to the lecture for today, the lecture size for today, what we need to do is we need to tell, our website needs to tell those devices that we are converting things to the viewport, like we're doing that conversion, right? Or we are, or the browser is looking for the viewport, or the device is telling the browser what the viewport is, etc., right? However you want to slice that. So what we need to start doing then is using then the viewport meta tag. So here then is the viewport meta tag. Okay. Have I described meta tags at all in here? Let's talk a little bit about meta tags. Oh man, I don't have a meta description in this page. Let's go here. So metadata. What do we mean by metadata? Metadata is defined, there I go asking a question. True, right? But in a universal sense, metadata is data about data. Meaning, the World Wide Web is one big set of data. You use keywords to search for smaller bits of data, like an article, okay? So you are using keywords like convert website to responsive, as metadata to then search for that smaller piece of data. So that's data about data, right? Does that make sense? So there then is meta tags that one of the most useful meta tags is the meta description tag. Okay, so if I searched for just what I was talking about, convert website to responsive. This right here, that shows up in the Google machine then, right? This is why I get a lot of SEO email, right? Because I've worked really hard to perform SEO on my websites and stuff. Okay. So to convert your pixel perfect 960 grid website layout to be responsive, so convert website responsive is the metadata then that I use to search for the topic of how do I convert a website to being responsive, because maybe I'm a business owner who had a website built in 2008, 2009, 2010 or so, and all of a sudden responsive design comes around and, oh shit, man, I still like my old website. It looks fine, the content's fine, the way it's organized is fine. It's just not working on mobile devices, right? Because it's not responsive. So can I then just take my old website and convert it for mobile devices? Or do I have to start all over again? Right? So that's the scenario that I'm pretending is the scenario, right? But that's actually what was happening at the time when I wrote that article. So somebody would then possibly search for convert website to responsive, and in the Google machine then, the Google machine writes the title out here and then uses this right here, the meta description, right? So on each one of my pages, I have a unique meta description, right? So that's how meta description tags work. Google uses meta description tags. So that's a fundamental concept component of SEO. Google does not use the meta name keywords anymore. Why I have that in there, I keep on forgetting to delete it out of there, but it's useless, right? Google discovered that when grandma was searching for toasters, non-toaster websites were abusing the keywords meta. Do you understand what I'm saying? Non-toaster websites? Porn, right? We're abusing it by putting in a lot of keywords that were misrepresentative of their content, and grandma would end up on, whoa, those are toasters, right? Thereby giving grandma a heart attack. I've lost a few grandmas that way, right? I'm kidding, I haven't. But the next one is the meta viewport, okay? So to save time, this is one of the things I'm gonna allow you to copy and paste, right? Instead of writing this out. You can go here to, did everybody see where that link was? If you're here, I have a version of it here, but again, I'm getting those errors with that plugin that I'm using for my code. And I just haven't had time to fix that error, right? It happens, you get too busy. So if you go to this one, using the viewport meta tag, that'll take you to developer.mozilla, which is a really great resource for code. You can go ahead and copy that. Go to your head tag or your header file. And this is where, again, because I might have multiple meta tags, I want to do the same kind of begin meta, end meta, and I can just paste that in there. So what it is saying is, hey, device, let's look at the viewport. We're going to look at the width equal to device width, right? Meaning, scale the page according to the device width. So if in our style sheet then, we are saying at 800 and below, it is going to sniff out the viewport of whatever device, or let's say 600 and below, right? It's going to say the viewport is below 600 because I'm on a phone and it's 360 or 375. And it's going to say then, great, I am going to scale that page to that device width, 375, okay? I'm also going to then say initial scale 100%, right? Why anybody would want to make it initial scale 3 or 0.5 or something is beyond me. I don't understand it, but that's how to read this viewport meta tag. Cool? Great. Moving on. Typography. Here's the thing that we're going to need to do now. We need to make our typography responsive. So, all those years of being a print designer and working in a fixed pixel world, I've had to readjust myself to, instead of a fixed unit world, points, pixels, inches, centimeters, whatever, to a relative units world, right? Being percentages or m's, okay? So, where does the term m come from? It's the width. Is it the height? Let's pretend it's one of those. Could be both. Right, there you go, right? It's the capital M, the M squared, right? Remember when I showed you in typography the bounding box thing, right? Everybody remember that? That's what the M squared is, okay? So what we need to do then is we need to start adjusting all of our typography to relative units. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, well, but Mike, okay, I see that if you have this design here and look at the image starts scaling, right? So if I said 100% on that image, right? That image then is coming out to 100% of its parent width element. But why isn't the type scaling? Because type wraps, right? Type basically is a bunch of individual little elements that instead of scaling, because there are line breaks, it wraps. So why can't we still use pixels? That's the question I've always had. And here's the answer. Somewhere in this document, or in this article, YM, CSS tricks. I can never remember the reason. But what I do remember is I read this article and it convinced me way down at the end. It was a little fuzzy to me still, but if you read that article basically says, just do it, man. It's the right way to do it, okay? And so what it really did say was image icons in your design, right? You'll want to size those icons. So has anybody ever used, you probably haven't because you're taking this class. Let's say it like this. If we go to my business website, these icons here, right? Those icons are actually fonts, not scalable vector graphics like I have on my website. So what I got out of that article was if you're doing those, make them responsive with apps, right? Okay, that sounds great. All I know is that, well, most people use it. That's the right way to do it. You know, that's the way that it's been adopted. There are articles out there that have convinced me. So let's do it. So in terms of that then, what we need to do is, if we have in our style sheet, we never defined any type in our body tag, did we? Right? We could have, but basically we were telling all headlines to be, all paragraphs to be, right? Content P16/24, so on and so forth, right? But if we convert these to M's, meaning if I want to say font size 1M, what I have to do first is define an M. So in that Ethan Marcotte book, the style of doing this that I picked up, that I've then adopted, and it's worked out great, is if I say font size 100%, this then sets all type to 16 pixels. So remember before we actually gave size to any of our elements, headlines and body copy and those like H1s, H2s, H3s, paragraph tags, all had their own default size. Does anybody remember that? Well, now if I say font 100%, that sets every element to a default size of 16 pixels. So 16 pixels now equals 1M, okay? So therefore then, if we have header H1 36 pixels, well, we need to convert that to M's. So in the Ethan Marcotte book then, the way they described doing this was 36 divided by 16 equals, yeah, I'm gonna cheat. .25 EMs. If I say 2.25 EMs there, so basically this is the what we want the target to be divided by the M square. Does that make sense? Okay. So now if we go and preview, doesn't look any different, does it? If I said though 4EM, right? 4 times 16, whatever that is, without me having to break out the calculator, right? I'm just going to go back to this. So now we need to perform this same conversion on all the rest of everything. So this one's easy. Every time I get to this, I'm looking for the divide button, and I'm like, oh yeah, there is no divide button. It's just that. All right? So, 1 EM. What about line height? 24 pixels. What am I going to do there? Huh? Same thing. Yeah, because if I'm saying 16/24, right, the units that I'm using are still pixels. So if 16 pixels is now changed to the either 100% or 1 EM, I can then say either 150% or 1.5 EM. For some reason, I don't know why, just personal preference, I guess, I am a fan of, when I'm setting my line height, setting it in percentages. Because when I've written things out in the past, 16/24, right? So if this is then 100 over 150, right? So that's why I use percentages. It's not really that strong of an argument, but it doesn't matter for line heights, whether, same thing with your type. If you want to make all your type, in other words, I could very well have said (225%), right? So now it's back to that 36 pixels. Okay, does that make sense? Now, the benefit of then doing EMs like this as well is, let's say that unlike before, I didn't have a universal type measurement, right? What I had was each element had its own type measurement, 16/24, 36/36, so on and so forth. But let's say then, if I think that what I've done with all the other settings, overall the type doesn't look big enough. What I could do then is say, well, let's change this, I'm going to exaggerate it, to font size 200%, thereby the now default pixel size is 32 pixels. So 1M would be 32 pixels. And now everything that I've styled with M's, right? Okay. So that's another reason to use M's. I just love pixels. I'm neurotic on the OCD about like the little fixed coming from my print background. I've had to build lots of snowmen. Hashtag let it go. That's my new favorite joke. I don't apologize for being a dad and using dad jokes. I don't. I know they're hideous. I'm okay with that. So same thing here, H2, font size, 24. Do I really need to write out the comments for every last one now? I don't, do I? I just need to go to my calculator and say 24, whoops, 24 divided by 16 equals 1.5. Right? And I could say here, I want to go with 100% here because this is where my H2s were 24 over 24. So the way also this can work is if I say 100%, am I saying 100% of 1 EM or am I saying 100% of 1.5 EMs? What? Pretty sure. So if I do that and I go back and I refresh, then my headline should still look like 24 over 24, right? And I am just going to, like I said, for all headlines, I'm using 100% line height. So again, if this is 18, and that's again why I also use percentages, because I think if I did this where I said, okay, I'm going to convert 18 divided by 16, 1.125. This sounds familiar to me, to my rationale from way back when. If I did that and it was 18 over 18, I would be tempted then to do this. Correct? So I'm not 100% sure if this is going to be 1.25 of 1.25. Right? So I've always, when in doubt, gone with the what I know is going to be solid, how I know things work, right? Input, select text area. I really do want to know what's happening up there. No, I don't think so. I believe you can use M's as a unit everywhere. I use percentages instead. I use M's for type, like when we get to, oh, are you saying like the margin bottom stuff? Yeah. You can. But again, I'm being pixel perfect here. And that doesn't affect the type resizing, like the icon resizing, because that's space after, right? And what I've adhered to, and this is a good question, right? What I've adhered to is, and what's happening is we are scaling for width only. We're not scaling for height. For height, things scroll. So for height, yeah, this is my rationale behind it, and I just take it for granted, I suppose. So for heights, I stay fixed because heights aren't moving relative. Only widths are. Is that an acceptable, right? But again, you can look, yes, you could be, and I've seen margin bottoms with the M's and that kind of stuff. I have just never delved into those calculations because, again, I love the fixed pixel stuff, you know. It's not going to break if I leave that pixels, right? Neither will it break if I leave everything pixels, but again, I've adapted to the, well, because of the icons and because that one article convinced me, and if I came in here and told you guys, still use pixels, you'd be like, I don't believe you, right? Does that make sense? Yeah. So I believe if I said 1EM line height 150, right? 150. If I now said on the UL here, let's test it. 1M, bottom of the UL tags. I believe, again, 1EM, because the an M font size to the UL tag, right? It is basically going to say 16 pixels margin bottom. That's my guess. So if we now go into the About page, sure enough, the margin bottom is a little bit more, right? So if I went and said margin bottom 2 EMs, right? It's now 32. Does that make sense? So yeah, if I was like, I want it 10 pixels. Uh-huh. How come this, I don't use 100% here? Oh, because I want to adhere to the body copy rule that is my rule, right? You'll get other people that have other different rules. For readability's sake, I go with the 2/3 rule. So 16 over 24, 1 over 150. Does that make sense? For body copy. Again, you can set, this is your page, right? You can futz with it to see how it works, right? And you can design it and make it look however you want to, right? I'm just telling you the principles, okay? So again, I could say here 1.5 EMs as well. Or if I said, let's go back to the paragraph, right? If I said line height 100%, meaning 1 EM, it's going to be 16 over 16. This is where then, right? Remember, line height is the measurement from baseline to baseline of type, okay? So I could use then 1.5 EM, right? And if I wanted to say margin bottom, then 1 EM. It's the margin bottom is going to be 16 pixels now. You're the first one to ask me that. Something I've totally taken for granted over the years, right? So now this is 16 pixel margin bottom, right? Which, hey, if that looks readable to you, if you want to set your type like that, right, knock yourself out. This is where how I set type with margins and paddings and that kind of stuff, and my sizes are just sizes that I've adopted over the years. They're by no means the sizes you should use, right? And that's where every design is different. And I think that the web or design in general, whether it's a poster or a CD cover, right, is 50% typography, if not more, right, as a design element, right? Look at web pages. How much of it is typography design, right? Well set, subtle typography design that fits the overall look and feel of the page. Typography design is also something that people take for granted. It doesn't wow them. They just know that it looks nice, right? Make sense? So, yeah, you can go ahead and then adjust. I would at least adjust your font sizes and your line heights to M's or percentages. And again, futz with the settings to see how it works, right? See if I have any more that I need to do. Nope, that should be it. Okay. In my notes, I have make your images responsive first and make your layout responsive second. I'm actually going to do the layout responsive first so we can see how images work in space. Okay, makes sense? All right. So what we need to do then is, if we have our design here, and right now, that white box comes out to 980 pixels, right? Let's also say that if we turn our grid on, uncomment out, right? As I then come in, oh, look at that. Let's not do it that way. The Google responsive thing is kind of updated, right? And they're bringing in everything within the viewport, right? What I kind of wanted to show you instead was, let's turn that off, is if I bring in this, right, nothing is going to respond, right? In other words, you're going to get your scroll bar down here, okay? Because we have said then in our style sheets, all of our major elements, fixed width, 980 pixels. So I still want, when I'm at a browser resolution or browser viewport, you see the viewport up top. Does everybody see the numbers top right up there? Right, so if I'm at 14 something or other, or if I'm at 11 something or other, this still is 980. When I'm up past here, I still want that to stay at 980. In other words, I don't want it to do this. Maybe I do if I had a different design, right? I'm gonna comment this out. Actually, not that one, because I want to demo this with the white part, my content, right? So if I commented that out and then said width 100%, okay? Because that is a block level element, and previously I have told it to be a width of a fixed pixel, but now it's still a block level element, and I'm saying, well, even if I got rid of, if I commented out the fixed width, because it's a block level element, that width of that content area is by nature a block level element is just going to try to go out 100%. Remember when we did the wrapper around our navigation and stuff like that? And because our column over here is a fixed 620 pixels and this is a fixed 300 pixels, this one is floated left and this one is floated right, then you get that big gap there in the center, okay? You could also do something where, let's say I said width 80%. You might see this on occasion, right? Or a lot, probably. So now I've got the gaps on the two sides, and as I bring this in, it is going to adhere to 80% of the viewport. Whatever the viewport is, that box is now 80% of it all the time. And because I have this element floated left and this element floated right, 620 plus 300, this box being 80% is now into whatever 80% of the viewport. Those two elements can't float anymore, so the one has to come down underneath, okay? But what I want to do, or what I've been adhering to, again, let's go to a design we all know and love, right? They actually did a really nice job with the new theme, right? Making it look like the WordPress theme for General UW, right? But these right here could, I haven't taken a look. Let's take a look at what their measurements are. Div class row. Div class container. Width 170. Mid width. Oh, so they're doing fixed widths as they come down breakpoints, right? In other words, at 768 and above, it's 750. At 992 and above, it's 970. At 1200 and above, it's 1170. So on and so forth, right? The style that I've started adhering to is, in other words, so theirs will probably jump instead of flex. Right. It does those hard jumps, right? Does that make sense? So the methodology that I adhere to and instead, and that we're going to do is, and let's, again, Chrome will really start to bog down if you have shitloads of tabs open like I always do. I'm going to change all of my main elements to instead of a fixed width, because I don't want it to go above 940, I'm going to use the property max width. Okay? So now, if I refresh, it's not going to go up above 980, but as we come down in size, it's then going to flex with the size of the viewport. Okay, that's what I like doing. Again, you'll see a whole lot of different styles out there. Have you guys actually, since you've been in the class, have you guys been using the inspect palette to take a look at other websites at all? Ooh, you should. Right? Start looking at code, you know, start viewing source, start looking at their style sheets, start seeing how things are built, man. Okay, so I'm going to do that for all my main level elements. So header is now going to be max width 980, navigation max width 980, and remember again, we're using the default box model right now. I'm going to show you the kind of I call it the bootstrap box model, the box sizing border box when we get to the images. Okay, but all my main elements then, navigation max width, content max width. For now, at above 1024, I am going to leave my text div at 620, just a fixed width of 620, and my sidebar at a fixed width 300. Okay, but footer then max width. So now, as things start coming in space, right? You don't see the two, you know, the footer and the header and that kind of stuff, but they're collapsing in. In other words, if I went and on the header border 1 pixel solid white, you can kind of see the white box coming in, but trust me, the white box is coming in with everything. Okay. So the next thing that we want to do is that because our parent elements then are starting to collapse in, being our header, our navigation, our content area, our footer, at above 1024, if I'm leaving this at 620 and this at 300, great, I don't see any difference, right? But now, because we are going desktop down versus mobile first, just because we built the desktop version first and you got to learn somewhere, right? What we need to do is go and start putting some media queries into our style sheet. So down at the bottom of our document then, what we can start to say is so desktop screen set to 1024 pixel or below. And this is where I want to use a media query. At media. Screen. So the media I'm choosing, not print, choosing screen. Okay. And parentheses, brackets, max width 1024 pixels. So let's see what's going to happen. Or let's say it like this. You were saying, oh, you can just go and change everything, right? Okay. Well, what if I said at 1024 and below, content div, display none. Why would I do that? I probably wouldn't, but just for a demo of what we're trying to do here. So, as then the design, fresh, comes in below 1024, right? So if I wanted to make everything blue and pink, change it. I could make it a completely different looking website, right? Different looking website. If you're ever going to add elements or take away elements, in other words, I can hide and show elements like that at different resolutions, but if I don't have the markup in there, the only way that I can actually add or subtract markup is through JavaScript, through jQuery. You can't, no, PHP does not have media queries. Because what's happening is the query to the server is already run, right? Right. But JavaScript, let me show you what I mean. So, for example, this is actually something that we're going to do in this lecture, but probably get to it next week. Let's go to this website. Oops, not stashing. In jQuery, I can say when the window resizes, if we're below 801, you can hide this. Else, show this. Or I can append, prepend, right? Write in styles, write in markup elements, write in whatever I want to, okay? So doing that with JavaScript. Make sense? Oops, I won't say that. That's probably not what we want to do here, right? So I don't want to have my content display none, but what I do want to do is my text element and my sidebar element. You saw them earlier. As we get below and they bump into each other, one just goes underneath the other. I want those to flex for a certain portion of the design. So what I need to do then is I need to convert things to percentages. So if I have my main content area, right, is a visual width of 980 pixels. But because I have padding 20 pixels on either side, And right now, I'd like to say, those of you that are watching this at home, again, can't see me pointing at the projector, but I need to stand up and kind of stretch myself out a little bit. So I'm taking precedent here. Our actual width of that element then, our live width, if you will, is 940. So therefore, just like we converted things to percentages, line height, et cetera, like that, if we convert then widths of things, just like you saw me say width 80% on the content div, right? So no matter what the viewport is, that width will be 80% of the viewport. I can say then, well, 620 divided by 940 equals 65.95. 300 divided by 940 equals 31.95. So then, as our viewport comes in and our max width of 980, right, catches and starts to come in because we said max width, not width, then those two divs that are inside of it, its children, will basically adhere to whatever percentage of the viewport. Right? Make sense? Responsive design. This is pretty much it, ladies and gentlemen, right? If you thought responsive design was this, oh my God, right? It's just figuring out percentages and, you know, having your layout move and, right, respond to the media queries. So that's where the term responsive design came from. So, text. Width. Can't remember what it was, but I'm going to do this. $620 pixels divided by 940 pixels, because I can remember that off the top of my head. And then I can, again, your calculator is your best friend. I did math in grade school by hand. Now I don't do it by hand anymore. Right? 65.95. Right? Round it up. I'm not going to round it up. 65.95%. Sidebar width. 300. 300 pixels divided by 940 pixels. $300 divided by 940 equals. Now I could actually copy that if I wanted to. Paste it there. 3191. It's a little bit too long. Right. Same thing. On, so let's take a look at this first. Because then one is floated left and one is floated right, and you saw that there was a big gap in between. Okay. Now, as things come in, right? Let's actually do this so you can see it working. So now as these come in, right, you can see that they are flexing as well. And again, our image still is not flexing, because we haven't gotten there yet. Let's go to the home page, show you something different. So we now here as well, then, our flex slider, because it's named flex slider, flexes, yeah, right, is already set that out. But we have these. So on these, remember we have 320 pixel margin, 320 pixel margin, 320 pixel margin, right? So there is another way of doing that. So if I go to, what did I call them? Widget item. So widgets, I did -20, good. Here is then another setting. Let's get rid of those. We don't need to overwrite those. This is something that I've been using, and I just found an article that explains it, that Thomas, maybe you're going to want to post on my lecture page. I know where to find it on my site, but I haven't posted it yet. So let me show you what I'm talking about. This is where the projector blows. How many of you are on my lecture page? Okay, so if you're on my lecture page, and it'll show up in the video, but as we go in space, right, you notice that the columns look like they're flexing, but the gutters are not. As you come in space, do you see that happening? Okay. I'm using, so let's go down here and say, if this is 4 columns, that we're going to be too far into the matrix if I leave that there. So if I inspect this, if I have a margin right on anything, right, before I would have to calculate that margin right, as a percentage. 20 pixels divided by 940 equals whatever percentage, right? And I never was happy having the gutters flex as well, because then the gutters would kind of get too narrow and it would ruin my design. And then I discovered a new property called calc. So if I have 4 across, again, you can't see it on the projector, but if you have my columns set to 4 across up top, you will see that it says width, calc 25% minus 20 pixels. So basically, it's saying that let's do it on our widgets. Width, calc. We have 3 widgets, right? 33% minus 20 pixels. See if I got that syntax right. Let me show you where that is in my lecture notes for you to grab, Thomas. If you go under Web 200, and we go to content layout for the web. We go down to grids down here. This is my new favorite CSS property. Grids under Mozilla Developer Network. Right? So this also goes into the, remember when we were talking how Bootstrap works and they have styles, 1 column, 2 column, 3 column, et cetera, et cetera. This as well goes into using grid systems. So this is an article that possibly you would want to read. Again, class, column, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way up to 12. Column, span, 1, 6, 3, span 2, right? Where you can do the, again, if we're using the 960 grid, let's see if they're using the 960 grid there. Span 4 columns, width 300. Span 5 columns, yeah, 380, because then that would be 300 plus a 20 pixel gutter plus a 60 pixel column, right? Yeah, span 8, 620, right? So that is a good way of, if you want to set that grid up, right? I've just never done it that way. Why? Because I've already built my frameworks the way I built them. And for this exercise, I need to kind of teach you guys something fundamental. But this methodology is really worth exploring, because then all you have to do is on like that text, right? Just give a class of it spans then 8 columns, right? The sidebar then spans 4 columns. And then if you need grids to change, right, you can start doing stuff like that. Like I said, this is how Bootstrap works, right? Down at the bottom then, that's where they calculate the gutters, etc. Right? And so anyway, you can read that, but that's where in going back to, if I have that in here and have it 3 across, right? Calc 33% minus 20. So in other words, those 3 boxes across, so I did get the syntax right there, right? Calc 33.33% minus 20. 33.33 minus 20 pixels. So therefore, what should be happening, and this is the first time I've implemented this into this class, right? I'm kind of a fly by the seat of my pants kind of guy. Let's see if it works, shall we? So now if I refresh, right, then, yep, it is basically saying that each one of these boxes, so the width from here to there, right, again, those of you at home, from here to there, right, the kind of 940 mark, right, is 100%. So if we divide 100% by 3, 3.3. So it's basically saying that then from here to there is 33%, minus 20 pixels for the gutter. Once I discovered this, oh my God, this is my new favorite thing of all time, because now I don't have to flex my gutters. I never liked having my gutters flexed. That always annoyed me, right? So now after I discovered this a couple of years ago, right, it's great. So I'd recommend using that as well. Does that make sense? You know how that works? But on our columns in the middle, because they all weren't floated left, one was floated right, one was floated left, and they were kind of fixed width, then we just made those into general percentages, and we're done with it. Okay? Let's continue on with our media queries, shall we? So, what's our next breakpoint after 1024? Does everybody know what I mean by breakpoint? What's the next viewport size that we have to consider? Huh? Tablet. So what's my viewport size? Why? Here's my answer. Tablets, when they first came out, the iPad, right? So I have an iPad mini. $1024, $768. So yeah, an iPad mini is a smaller 1024, $768. So it's really nice. It feels like a book. Who has an iPad? Anybody? iPad minis are great because they feel smaller, like a book. A normal one is just too big for reading, right? The downfall is the type is a little smaller. So on web pages, it looks a little small, right? For books and stuff, it looks nice. 768. But when researching, well, let's say it like this. I think the only tablet is the iPad, right? I also think the only laptop is a MacBook Pro, right? I'm right, aren't I? Right? So there are tablets that will go up past certain marker, but 800 seems to be that nice cutoff of there are some Samsung tablets that are 800 by 600, right? Or 1020 something by 800, I think. Let's just say 800 is a nice round number, right? Then below that for tablets. So, let's see. We have about 10 more minutes, and we'll pick this up next week. So I'm going to say then tablet, screen set to 800 pixel or below. Oh man, that's going to bother me. That's media, screen, and parentheses, max width 800 pixels. Now, one year we had somebody do this. I believe they put a space here, and it didn't work. I'm just saying. If that happens to you, it's because there's a space there, possibly. Isn't that what happened, Thomas? Do you remember that? No? I think somebody had a space here. Or maybe they had it like this, and that was wrong. I don't know. Here's where then in my old notes, this is where I changed header. And we'll just go by my notes, even though I may or may not do it that way anymore. This is where then I want to adjust my padding left and right. So padding, top and bottom 0, and left and right I did 2.04 because that was then the measurement from, and we're just trying to cover as much ground. Again, you guys can do whatever you want to make your design look the way you want it to make it, you know, but based off of this screenshot here, right, if I had this 20 pixel padding over here left and right, then I want to take that 20 pixel padding out of the 980 mark, so it was 2.04. Fair enough? Great. So for header and navigation and footer, let's actually do it like this. Header, navigation, footer, padding, top and bottom 0, left and right 2.4%. And, oh, I removed the border radius on the content. Content. Border radius. 0. So we look at our design now. Refresh this. We should see as things come in to 800. Because here we had no padding out here, right? So that's where when it gets into 800, bang, now we have padding, right? And then our corners on this disappear. I have some cleanup work to do on my design, don't I? Kind of rushed through some things. If we go to our About page, there again, right? Let me get rid of that 1 pixel border. We don't need that anymore because I was just doing that for, see it in space. And I'm going to get rid of background color on, where's it? I did it up here, didn't I? Background. There. Save. All right, so we should have this going on, but then eventually, as we get in under our next breakpoint that I like to use is 600. So that's where I'm going to say phone, screen, set to 600 pixels, or below X media screen and max width 600 pixels. And we will do this next week. We have 1 minute. Or do you guys want to stay until like 10 p.m.? Right, you don't want. So yeah, we just now have to clean up our layout like that. We'll then next week take a look at the images, and then we'll write a JavaScript toggle menu. And then class will be done. And you'll have a shell of a website that you can modify to your heart's content and or know how to work on other websites. So, yeah. I don't know. I would email, yeah. What I do know is this. Oops. If you are going to be doing anything like this for a living, right? How many of you already have your own domain name? Okay. If you do not have your own domain name, I recommend DreamHost. Now, DreamHost also has, let's see, DreamHost students pricing. They have a discount for students. Save 40%. I think, maybe. Educational discount, there it is. Promo.edu. So I would recommend that you guys go with DreamHost. They are the company that I'm using. They're pretty rock solid, you know, as far as hosting companies go. You can set up as many. You can get an account and then you can register as many domain names as you want for an extra $12 a year, something like that. And then you can set up as many databases and subdomains and installs, and you know, they have one click install for WordPress and you know, stuff like that. So I would really recommend eventually doing the DreamHost thing and moving this over, you know, to or build a new one, you know, because now you know how to do it. Right? Well, you will. You're farther ahead than you were when you came in here.
I know
right?
My navigation is super screwed up the last 2 weeks, and I figured it out. Using like inspector.
Thanks for adding it.
Oh, very.
Yeah, yeah, LinkedIn or you know, Facebook. Yeah, yeah, hit us up, you know.
Yeah.
It's a really weird. This
It's what?
Yeah, I was thinking about that.
This is a real practical, you know, this is, you know, because for a long time what I heard was, where's the engineering? And this is, you know, front-end engineering, you know? So, did you import tag in there? spell it? Huh. I would go and just copy and paste that from Mozilla, just to make sure that you can write that out. Yeah. Just to make sure, like stuff like that, where it's like, yeah. See if that fixes it. Just let me see your style sheet.
Yeah.
Okay, so go take a look at
So
your
under
linter style sheet. I'm not seeing it here, so go back and do the viewport thing, start there, and then things are still broken, send it to me or Thomas.
Couple more questions.
Oh, sure.
So I started working on making a portfolio.
Okay.
I didn't know where to start in terms of the design for it, so what I did was I just looked at websites.
Yeah.
And I found this one, and started using this. And they said it was free to use.
Sure. Yeah, I use it for Git, you know. Oh, so it's like a framework that you can.
Yeah, so I guess,
Yeah, the only thing is, and this is where like, if you are marketing yourself as a web designer, if you're marketing yourself as a researcher using a bootstrap template, it's fine, because nobody's going to expect you to do web design. They will expect you to possibly have some skills, or same thing as a user. Right, I've seen some user interface designers just use bootstrap. Awesome, right? So, I'm not a recruiter. I don't have any. I've never heard of recruiters. Do you want to anywhere else? I would ask them. But for me, I would think, like I said, what do you want to do? Okay. So if you want to be a UX designer, like I said, using a bootstrap template or something like that, it's going to be right. Still probably wouldn't look as great as if you did or something. Because as a UX designer,
That's fine too.
I don't know, most UX designers works responsible for code, but I've seen it where they want UX designers, UI, UX designers who know HTML, CSS, and
Yeah.
so that's the case again. So
Yeah, so when you do the
kind of the bottom line to me is that a requirement in the job?
Sure.
And if it is, it's a sliding scale, right? Like I myself would use a template to represent myself because I represent myself as I'll build something from scratch. But if I was just trying to go get a job at a firm and I was a UX designer who was doing interface layouts and then running tests and that kind of stuff, I'm guessing this is my guess.
It's a longer explanation. I know, I see that.
It's not the one with it.
But yeah, your font size.
But I would ask the recruiter,
It's basically
to be honest with you,
saying
because I would be familiar, because I've actually been
100% the white light. It's gonna like just
curious about that, because I've seen some of my students
font
that I love Seattle Central, that they have used the bootstrap template stuff, but they're marketing themselves as more project developers and like UX designers and not food developers, right?
I started with a there, you know.
Right.
All right, well, I'll check that out and I'll write it
It's
back.
basically, you know, mapping out the, I mean, if you want to be, you know, if you are going to push yourself as a user experience designer, and you design your experience of your portfolio, I'm thinking that just represents you more. So here's how I went about sketching out the designs for my website, to building them out, to, you know, that as a case study might be something that might be of interest. So I mean, you would start with the whole design process. So, you know, pencil sketches of functionality, and again, what's your call to action, right? What do you want people to contact you, right? Look at the resume. So those are then call to actions that you would want to feature however you want to feature them, and then go from there. You know what I mean? Is that kind of what you're asking?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's all the same, just, you know, mapping out the, you know, whether you want to map stuff out in Illustrator first, or, you know, use Action or something like that, however you get from A to Z is however you get from A to Z. You know, I mean, in mine, what I do is I sketch things out on paper and then go into Illustrator. You know, and then look at my Web 200 class, and I go through how to do wireframe in Illustrator and then integrate visual designs in there. Those lectures I recorded like this one. Without the lectures to turn the tape off. We're still recording. So the whole world has been hearing our conversation. Good thing it was a legitimate, you know. So if you've been listening to that conversation, good thing that I wasn't talking shit.